Sanhedrin members, with the high priest at center, await the arrival of their colleagues to begin a session. This chamber, built of meticulously carved ashlars, was discovered near the underground portion of the western wall. The Sanhedrin's meeting place in the temple courts, the chamber of hewn stone, may have resembled it. The Sanhedrin. As soon as it was day, the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, came together and led him into their council. Luke 22:66. The high priest. The Sanhedrin was a council of sages that formed the highest political, religious, and judicial authority of the Jewish people in the Roman period. The Sanhedrin, whose name comes from the Greek word meaning council, was made up of 71 members. As Acts 23:6 notes, at the time of Paul's appearance before the body, the Sanhedrin was composed of two factions, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. How the two parties functioned together within the council is unclear. One opinion says that each party dominated the council in turn. Others believe that there were three small Sanhedrins of 23 judges each, who met jointly in order to deliver judgment on matters of weighty national importance, and were headed by a team of two leaders. This opinion suggests that it might have been a Sadducee-dominated Sanhedrin that interrogated Jesus. Acts 4:1-3, Acts 5:17, 18, 21. But after 135 CE and the failure of the second revolt of the Jews against the Romans brought about the exile of Jews from Jerusalem and Judea, the Sanhedrin moved to the Galilee where, with time, its powers declined and eventually it was delegitimized by the Romans. The Sanhedrin met daily in the temple in the chamber of hewn stone, adjacent to the court of the priests. Apparently its deliberations were open to the public, for an early commentary on Deuteronomy 14:23 says, "When one brings the sacrifices that one has vowed to the temple, he enters the chamber of hewn stone and sees the sages and their disciples sitting and engaging in the study of Torah. The sight inspires him also to study Torah." The Pharisees and the Sadducees. The meaning of the word Pharisee is uncertain. It may come from the Hebrew word parish, meaning separate. The name may have been applied to the group by the Hasmonean king, John Hyrcanus, who opposed them in favor of the aristocratic Sadducees and expelled them from the Sanhedrin. The Pharisees themselves applied a different meaning to the word, derived from the Hebrew word interpret. The Pharisees were the interpreters of the Torah. They taught that everything is preordained, but that people have the free will to choose their path. They believed in the resurrection of the dead, one of the principal doctrines that divided them from the Sadducees, and one that made their sect attractive to the masses who lived under great duress and difficulty in their daily lives. Pharisaic belief in the coming of the Messiah was one they had in common with the Essenes. On the other hand, their creed that all of history is preordained made them averse to the philosophy of the Zealots, who taught that the Romans could be removed by violent intervention. The Pharisees, while loyal to the teachings of the Torah and significantly involved in matters of ritual purity, were also distinctly humanitarian and practical in their interpretations of it. Both the Pharisees and the Sadducees acknowledged the importance of the written law, the Torah. But the Pharisees also believed in the possibility of interpretation of the Torah, which became known as the oral law. The Sadducees, on the other hand, would not accept anything unless they could trace it directly back to the written law. The Sadducees were aristocrats and people of means. Their harsh religious rulings and rejection of belief in an afterlife made them appear severe. Josephus says they were gruff and distant from each other in conversation, even if they were acquainted. Among the Sadducees was the family of Annas, who sent Jesus bound to Caiaphas, John 18:24, and who impressed the apostles, Acts 5:17. Jesus was severely critical of both the Pharisees and the Sadducees. On the other hand, many of Jesus' actions demonstrated his connection to Pharisaic customs, such as the donation of the half shekel to the temple. His teaching methods were also those employed by the Pharisees, and he exhorted his followers to listen to the Pharisees that sit in Moses' seat, Matthew 23:1, although not to behave as they did because they say and do not do, Matthew 23:3. Many Pharisaic themes in the teachings of Jesus, such as the kingdom of heaven and repentance, as well as emphasis on belief in the coming of the Messiah, the end days, miracles, and angels, made Pharisaic Judaism fertile soil for early Christianity to flourish. Paul was a Pharisee, Acts 23:6, Acts 26:5, a pupil of one of the most eminent Pharisaic figures of the period, Rabbi Gamliel, who in Acts 5:34 is shown defending the early Christians. So were Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus, and some early members of the church. Acts 15:5. Pharisaic emphasis on teaching in the synagogues led to their exerting a major influence on Judaism in the wake of the destruction of the temple and becoming the most widespread of Jewish philosophical sects.